The kiln of the first flame sputters. Gwyn's hollow form collapses into ash, his eyes fixed on a fire that cannot be saved. Every lore video frames linking as sacrifice. What if it was calculation, his final whisper to the hunter, asterisk the age of fire must last asterisk not a plea, but a death rattle. But a death rattle he became kindling sputters. Cinder's Gwyn's last act was hollow not heroism, his dark. Linking as sacrifice dying God's wager, burn me instead, time buys what light remains. The Lord of Cinder stood at the kiln's edge. His final question was not can I save this world, but how much of me must rot to keep the rot at bay. The first flame flickered at a dying star in human form. To Link it was to become fuel, not savior. Gwyn's body became kindling, his soul ash. Did he believe the age of fire could still be won? Or was he merely the inevitable, buying centuries for others to find answers he had none? The kiln's flames did not purify, they consumed. Yet in that hollow act a truth burns, some gods do not rise. They collapse inward, compressing their final breath into a spark for what comes next. Gwyn's linking was no triumph. It was a debt paid in flesh, a wager that something anything might yet defy the dark. Beneath the halig tree's root, where Ashen's ruin bleeds into Canehurst's cracked stones, the first flame roared to life. A spark in the age of grey, it carved the world into kindling and kindlers. Gwyn stood among four who seized Lord souls, thrusting them into the everlasting dragon's maws. His lightning spear split scales that had not known defeat. The age of fire was not his to found but his too. He knew the flame's heart was hollow. A wick burning itself to stall the dark. When the Lord's souls dimmed, when the dragons fell, Gwyn climbed the high wall, not to sacrifice, to shatter. His soul, a matchstick fed to the forge. The linking was a self-erasure, a countdown begun. Every flamebearer who followed was but a relay, a heartbeat in a borrowed hour. The undead asylum echoes with those who tried to outrun this truth. Gwyn's fire was never endless. It was a clockwork chicken, screeching to lull the void. The age of fire was always alone, repaid in ash, and still he leapt, not as savior, as the final tinder in a pyre that could not be quenched. The flame's last breath whispers through the covenant's bones, a debt paid, not a debt spared. The debt was Gwyn himself. His reign was a storm of conquest, lightning spear in hand. He cleaved the everlasting dragons from the skies. Their bones now litter the twilight, remnants of a war that birthed the age of fire. Yet fire demands fuel, and Gwyn knew the first flame would gutter. He saw the end before the beginning. His children fractured the throne. The firstborn, a shadow of his own making, was erased from name and history. Guinevere fled to Lindell, her sorrow a cold star in the dark. Gwyndolin, the last spark of his blood, was raised as a daughter he could not call his own. The hearth crumbled as embers flew. Still, Gwyn burned. When the flame waned, he did not offer himself as a bridge. He became the match. Linking the first flame was no noble passing, it was a king swallowing his crown, a father consuming his lineage to buy breath for strangers. The lightning spear, once a weapon, now pierced his ribs as he channeled the final spark. His soul became the fuse, his name the kindling. He knew what the flame could not say. Ashes are all that outlive fire. The age of fire was never his to build. He merely delayed the frost, a temporary defiance against the rot. His legacy is a lie wrapped in smoketh. Lord of Cinder did not sacrifice, he immolated. And in his death he left a riddle, a pyre that roars yet starves, a covenant of shadows still waiting for king who will never rise. The kiln's molten light blinds, Gwyn's armor melts to slag, he steps forward, hotter than the forging of stars, the first flame gnaws at his bones. A clockwork mechanism, ancient and screaming, begins to turn. His blood evaporates, his voice cracks, the age of fire must not end. The hunter watches, helpless. Gwyn's crown of white flame burns brighter, not to save, to stall, to buy years of pretend. The kiln's walls pulse, they are not a tomb, they are a gullet. His fingers unravel, he feels the flame's hunger. It is not a god, it is a child screaming for milk. Gwyn offers his marrow, his lungs collapse. The hunter's sword trembles. Gwyn's final breath is a whisper, kindle before the dark claims you. The flame swallows his name, no ashes remain, only a hollow. A pyre that starves, a covenant of shadows still waiting. The ritual works. The flame flares for a time, the lands between breathe, heroes rise, but the clock ticks. Gwyn's body was the match, his soul the wick. The age of fire does not live, it borrows. The hunter carries the message now, a lie wrapped in duty. Kindle the flame as if renewal is possible, as if fire can be tamed. The kiln cools, the hunter kneels. Gwyn's voice lingers in the stone, a command, a confession. The flame's light is a borrowed dawn. The dark outside gnaws, always gnaws. The covenant whispers, asterisk, a king will come. Asterisk, but no king exists, only a loop. A death bound to repeat. Gwyn knew this, chose this. To delay the end, he became the end. The hunter leaves, the kiln's door slams, the flame flickers. A question hangs, how many more must burn? How many more hollows must be carved? The age of fire roars, it starves, and somewhere a new hero lifts a sword. Blind, determined, ready to relight a fire that cannot live. But to understand what came next, you must understand what Gwyn gave up. His soul, his light, his very essence, consumed by the first flame's dying breath. He did not sacrifice himself, immolated. A hollow king, crowned in ash, his body a tomb, his title a lie. The Lord of Cinder was no savior. He was a clock ticking down the fire's last moments, and when the age gasped its final shuddering breath, Gwyn was already gone. A ghost in the embers, waiting for a hero who would never know the truth. Gwyn's ritual was not a sacrifice, it was a surrender. His body became ash, his divinity a spent wick. The first flame flickered, borrowed time bought with his own life. Kin turned to shadows, the undead curse gnawing at their bones. Brothers warred, empires crumbled, all to sustain a dying age. Gwyn, the Lord of Cinder, sits hollowed, a husk waiting for a hero who may never come. His bloodline fractured, each heir devoured by the hollowing plague. The undead curse spread like rot, binding souls to endless decay. The age of fire stretched on, but without its light, darkness crept in, twisting what remained. Hollow-eyed, he watches the world unravel, a king without a kingdom. Each death fuels the curse, each soul a shackle to the inevitable. The flame fades, the world unravels. What remains when the light goes out? The kiln's hunger was not a choice, it was a sentence. Gwyn's flesh unraveled in its maw, a king's bones reduced to kindling. His soul, once a beacon, was folded into the flame's throat, a final, silent hymn. What remains when light drowns in its own reflection? A shell, a cipher. The Lord of Cinder stands not as deity but as arithmetic. His armor, cracked and smoldering, etches the price of the fire's decay. Each ember clings to his hollow chest like a borrowed heartbeat. The hunter kneels at the kiln's edge, gauntleted hand hovering over the flame. To rekindle is to repeat the ritual. To let it die is to unleash the dark. The third path absorbing the flamies, no triumph. It is the curse Gwyn wore, a god hollowed by his own design. His eyes, if they still gleam, hold no fire, only the arithmetic of ages. How many souls must rot to stall the math? How many kings must burn to the end? The queen's vessel lies shattered nearby, her name already ash on the wind. Her sacrifice fed the flame. Gwyn's fed the lie. The first flame was never salvation. It was a clockwork, its ticks measured in immolated divinity. The hunter feels it now, the pull of the kiln, the whisper of more. To link is to become the Lord of Cinder, a warden of your own extinction, a ghost with a purpose too vast to grasp. Gwyn's final act was not courage. It was a stopgap, a god trading eternity for a delay. The flame does not burn brighter, it burns borrowed. And when the hunter chooses whether to continue the theft or let the dark wind world will not remember Gwyn's name. It will remember the weight of waiting. Gwyn's pyre is extinguished, his crown is ash. What remains in the kiln is not a king, but a placeholder, a dying flame delaying the dark. He does not wait for salvation, he waits for a successor to inherit the weight. The first flame's link was no noble act. It was a torch passed to his own ribs, a self-made fuse. Each ember he borrowed stole moments from his bones. Now his hollowed form, chained to the kiln's cold throne, cradles the last warmth, a borrowed hourglass. The kiln's silence is a mausoleum for a vanished age. His eyes, if they still blink, see only the void beyond the flame's end. The world moves on without his name. Only the kiln's stillness remembers the price of waiting. The dark approaches, the hunter decides. Gwyn's cinder holds, but time is not his to keep. The four lords each clutch their stolen stars, fragments of the first flame's dying heart. Gwyn, the final king, bore his lord's soul like a funeral pyre. The undead settlement's ashen wind still whispers of his choice, how he did not sacrifice himself, but unmade himself. To link the flame was to become its fuel. His body, his will, his name all fed the cinder, a king who became kindling. Across the land, the furtive pygmy gnawed at the same flame, but with poison. In the twisted woods where shadows breed teeth, he plotted not to burn himself, but to twist the flame's purpose. The dark could be fed, he murmured, if only the fire's core were siphoned, its light leached into void. His lord's soul, a shriveled thing, pulsed with hunger. He did not seek to delay decay, he sought to corrupt it. Gwyn's kiln still hums with the weight of his final breath. The hunter's hollow shell stands sentinel, a monument to borrowed time. But the pygmy's lair reeks of rot fungi bloom where light should fall, and the air thickens with the stench of what was nearly unmade. Both reached for the flame's throat. One choked it into ember, another into mold. What does the flame care for their games? It burns or it does not. Gwyn's self-erasure bought centuries of falsehood, a lie that the age could be preserved. The pygmy's theft would have birthed an age of rot had not the flame's will proved stronger than his. Both were consumed, both were discarded. The fire's cycle tolerates no masters, only vessels. The cinders cool, the dark approaches. The next lord will rise. Will they choose Gwyn's pyre or the pygmy's poison? The flame waits, always it waits. The hunter's choice mirrors Gwyn's dilemma, relink, fade, or usurp. To link is to burn, to fade is to surrender, to break is to defy. Gwyn chose the kiln's pyre, not as a hero's sacrifice, but a dying god's last gambit. His flame was a match struck against the void, a spark to delay the dark's advance. The Lord of Cinder did not save the age of fire. He set it ablaze, his final words whispered to the hunter, to the flame, to the void carved his truth into the cinders. Asterisk, the age of fire must not end. Asterisk, a plea. A lie, a death rattle, for Gwyn knew the first flame's light was a borrowed hour. Each relink steals time from the inevitable. His soul, fused to the kiln's heart, became both fuel and funeral. The cycle gnaws even gods. The hunter sees three paths. Gwyn saw only one, to collapse the flame's weight onto his bones, to become ash and delay the dark by a breath. A sovereign's final trick, a king's last coin. The Lord of Cinder did not sacrifice himself, he unmade himself. His cinders now whisper through the kiln's veins, a ghost's chorus pleading with every soul who treads the path. The flame waits, the dark waits, the choice waits, but Gwyn's words remain etched into the dying light. Asterisk, the age of fire must not end. Asterisk. The flame waits, the dark waits, the choice waits. But Gwyn's words remain etched into the dying light. Asterisk, the age of fire must not end. Asterisk, what would you do, standing at his pyre? Four lords claim their souls, each a gamble. Nito traded death, the pygmy his might. Gwyn burned his life to fuel a clockwork age, but what of the Witch of Izalith? Her soul was no gambit, it was a debt, a price paid in blood to crown a throne of